Failures of negotiations of World War I, Hitler rose to power and started World War II. Using the support of the German people, he tried to exert his influence and expand his empire. Eventually, two sides were born, the Allied powers and the Axis powers. This war was fought all over the world and resulted in terrible losses. Hitler played an extremely important role in World War II. In his view, the Aryans were threatened by inferior people who are preventing them from reaching their full potential. As a result, Hitler was a strong supporter of Liberalism, the idea that a nation's power depends on the amount and type of land they had. This was the fuel for expansion and created a desire to mass exterminate others to reach his goal. In the 1920s, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, which is a book filled with Hitler's ideas. As the Nazis rose into power throughout Germany, Hitler's first move against the Treaty of Versailles, which was created at the end of World War I, was secretly expanding the German army to fulfill his goal of expansion. The Germans then occupied the demilitarized Rhineland, which the French had the right to protect, but that action was simply viewed as reasonable. In Germany's expansion, they used a new type of warfare known as the Blitzkrieg or lightning war. While using Blitzkrieg, the Luftwaffe would first bomb the enemy line. The tanks would then strike in the mobile artillery form strike forces. This technique proved to be extremely effective in their battles. After Austria was annexed, Austria was unified with Germany, and Hitler decided to set his eyes on Czechoslovakia. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain met with Hitler to negotiate for the southern land. Since Chamberlain was determined to avoid war at all costs, he decided to use appeasement to satisfy Hitler and allow the Germans to occupy the land. This action caused Hitler to think that the Western democracies were weak and left him to invade the Czechs. However, war was inevitable when the Germans invaded Poland with the Soviet Union in 1939. British and France declared war against Germany. Hitler then continued his expansions by invading Norway, attacking the Netherlands, Belgium, and France. In France, both the Germans and Italians attacked and were shocked by the speed and numbers of the soldiers and were unable to resist. British and French forces were evacuated to Great Britain during the miracle of Dunkirk, and France became the Vichy, a German puppet state. The inability of Britain in defending the invaded countries caused growing discontent, which forced Chamberlain to resign. Winston Churchill, who strongly opposed Nazi Germany, rallied together the British. The Germans attempted to use the Luftwaffe against British air and naval bases, but British technology and air strength caused Germany to back off.
Initially, Hitler did not desire a two-front war and wanted to avoid conflict with the Soviet Union, but after his defeat against Britain, Hitler believed that the only way to destroy the British would be by destroying the possibility of Soviet support. Before invading the Soviet Union, Hitler experienced problems in the Balkans and invaded the newly formed country of Yugoslavia and Greece. And in the summer of 1941, Nazi Germany began to invade the Soviet Union, and despite military successes, they were unable to eliminate the Soviet army or cause the Soviet Union to collapse. The turning point in the East was at the Battle of Stalingrad, where Hitler realized that the Germans could not defeat the Soviet Union. Japan began its invasion in Asia, but was eventually stopped by the United States. The U.S. was alarmed by Japan's movement towards the U.S.-controlled territory of the Philippines and sent General MacArthur to defend the land. This led to the Pearl Harbor bombings in an attempt to weaken the U.S. Navy, which prompted the U.S. to join World War II. This created a coalition called the Allied Powers, where the U.S. teamed up with Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and France, where they agreed to fight the Axis powers. The turning point of the war in the Pacific was at the Battle of Midway, where the Americans stopped Japanese advance. The Americans destroyed all of Japan's aircraft carriers and were able to begin an offensive on Japanese-held islands. In 1942, the Allies invaded North Africa, and by 1943, they were able to invade mainland Italy through the Boot. In 1944, the Allied invasion of France through the beaches of Normandy surprised German troops and succeeded in regaining France. At this point, the US and the Soviet Union were on a race to Berlin, and in 1945, when Hitler understood that the Germans had no chance of success, he committed suicide, causing Germany to surrender days later. In the Pacific, as an attempt to prevent a full-scale invasion of mainland Japan, the United States decided to drop 2 atomic bombs on Japan, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, causing the Japanese to unconditionally surrender. During Hitler's invasions against other countries, there were also major changes within Germany. Hitler's belief in Aryan supremacy led to the Holocaust, where he attempted to exterminate the Jewish people in Europe. It first began with forced emigrations until the Nazis decided to use the final solution. In that plan, Jews were forcibly rounded up and were concentrated in ghettos and death camps. In total, 5 to 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Internally, for many other countries, World War II had a positive effect on the economy due to the influx of jobs and new factories for war goods. World War II created tensions and had enormous costs. In total, at least 21 million soldiers died and over 40 million civilians were killed. Millions more were displaced, and the cities throughout Europe were in ruins for the use of total war. The partitions and conferences also led to tensions between the Western powers and the Soviet Union, which is later seen during the Cold War. Overall, the Axis powers not only expanded due to their desire to gain power, but also for the need of resources and goods to support their population.